a line, address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed, 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You got a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that when you get in the show you're well organized and you take as little time as possible so we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem as not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Thank you all again for joining us. Your voice in the community, thought that get results. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, Vaughan Radio. Click subscribe and you have us, the video streaming, and also via our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Tonight, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. And if I may, I would just like to extend the good evening greetings to my family and friends at home and in the diaspora. And Webbo, I just want to underscore what you said a while ago, and I think it's about time it be said again, just to reinforce the point that we ought to respect others. Let us focus on the issues. I encourage people to call in, and most of us, I think, have the capacity to focus on the issues. So let us do so in a respectful manner. There's no need to get personal. You may not like my views, I may not like yours, but we still need to respect each other at the end of the day. Thanks for the invitation to join you, Webbo.
Conrad Nile-Libert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my colleague around the table and everyone in tune to the program. Webbo, once again, we gather to discuss the issues affecting the people, something I always enjoy doing, especially here at Vaughan Radio, Webbo. I would like to hail my friends in the international circle. It's been a while I have not touched base, but I know they're constantly in tune to the program. My friends in Toronto and Connecticut, good evening. Webbo, I just want to thank you for having me once again on this program, and I look forward to a healthy debate this evening, discussion.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis and those who listen to us on the World Wide Web throughout the Caribbean Basin and indeed further afield the world. Webbo, I recognize that this month is Teachers' Month, and I must give a shout out, although his soul is resting in peace, to the late Ivor Walters. He was the greatest teacher in my book who ever lived, and as a result I must say hello to him, although he has gone to the great beyond some time in the past. Of course, he was one who took a very keen interest in me, although I didn't look the part as coming from a wealthy family, but at the same time he recognized that every child should be given a chance and no child left behind, and as a result he took a keen interest in my academic development, foundation development, and as a result I am who I am today. Even at college, I must say flatly that the professors couldn't touch Ivor Walters as he stood. But like I've said, he taught me so many things, and at the same time I took it in. And I remembered one time he told me, leave the rest of them there, go outside, go play. And that's how he was. And I understood since I came back here that he would in fact be a policeman. If a child doesn't show up in school, he took it upon himself to go out and find him. I would leave it there, Webbo. Good evening.
What we got?
Well, but if I may, before we are on to anything new, I would just like to join Mr. Stanley in saluting teachers on Teachers Month. I think today I was privileged enough to pass by Ivor Walters School, and incidentally today is the head mistress's birthday as well. So I would like to take this opportunity to just extend, well, I already did on a personal basis, but just to acknowledge her, publicly acknowledge her for the work that she is doing at Ivor Walters Primary. Indeed, I don't think anybody could necessarily replace Teacher Ivor. Like Stanley had fond memories of him, and so do I. And so I just like to salute teachers on today is, I think, Teachers' Day, International Teachers' Day, but the month, we're celebrating Teachers' Month. And there are some other, I think there's some other remembrances that could be done at this point in time, but I'll just leave them because we have a lot of teachers that, I think deserve to be, acknowledged. But I think that you had a program that you would have done that here at Vaughan. Every year I think I hear people calling in to salute teachers who would have been instrumental in their development. And so I'll leave that there for now.
Well, yes, of course, I joined my colleague. I, to be honest, was unaware that today is International Teachers' Day, but such an important profession, Webbo, and sometimes we look at teachers going to work every day in the schools and see them as teachers and so forth, but teaching is sometimes a part of our duty and responsibility sometimes as adults in the community, and we find ourselves extending information and setting the examples that ought to be set in the community, really. I think we all can be seen as teachers if we take the time out to pass on positive information to people, and of course at the same time we got to sometimes see ourselves as students, because we don't know it all, and so we are sometimes enlightened by people that sometimes we think doesn't have the educational background as some of us may have. And so we must be willing and open to learn. I guess both things work together. The teachers teach, and there must be someone to learn, and never feel like you're too big or too well educated to learn. So it's a very important day, and of course, as Dr. Bartlett said, there's so many teachers out there that one can pay recognition to and tribute. One that always come to my mind was Violet, because I have a lot of love and respect for that lady, because she stood up for me when I was going through difficult times in sixth form, and so I always tip my hat to her when I see her. A very special individual, and of course there's so many more individual of her caliber in terms of people who have impact on people's life over the many years. Respect is due, homage is due to such people, really, because they occupy such a fundamental part in our community, in our society. The teachers have serious influence on the kids, and the kids are the leaders tomorrow. So that, of course, highlights their importance to a great extent. Where I pay homage and tribute to the teachers, not just here, but all over the world. Webbo.
Well, Webbo, we must understand that the real place, after being given a foundational education at the primary level, at the secondary level, and ultimately at college, university levels, we know that to learn, the real world is the place where you should learn far more in order to be who you are and what you really want to accomplish and who you want to become. And in that regard, those who are of us who are in the real world, we have an obligation to teach and to pass on information and to ensure that those people who are there as the receivers of what we are attempting to disseminate to them, they pay a keen interest. Of course, the children of today are not as attentive as they should be. Even the adults, only about 3% of the people in the world today are really attentive and focused as to where the real world is heading. As a matter of fact, as I've said it here before, 97% of the world population is heading into the wrong direction, and the few who are heading in the right direction, they are asking, why are they going in that direction? And they truly got some real rough comments with reference to those in the minority who are heading in the right direction, but blindly and so unfocused, they have miscategorized and mislabeled those people in terms of the minority who are leading the world. And we are here to, in fact, play our part depending on our levels and determine who must get what we have to offer in terms of guidance, training, teaching, no matter what you call it. But in the real world, that's where you're supposed to learn and ascend and assimilate. Webbo.
But those 3% that Mr. Stanley is talking about have a lot of questions to answer, because I don't think the world is really in a really happy place at this point in time. In terms of history, it's been underlined as one of the most challenging time in history. So those 3% have, I suppose, they have to answer, should be held responsible for what is happening today. We got a global pandemic, millions have died, and of course we see what's going on in Israel, Palestine, Afghanistan, to name a few. What's going on with those 3%?
Well, let me take you on for a second. You mentioned Afghanistan. Afghanistan was pulled from the 7th century up to the 21st century, so to speak, in Kabul. But yet, the leaders who led that country during that time when they were barbarians, they still didn't get it. What they should have done was to have allowed the United States to have spent without ceasing, and to truly lift even themselves out of that dilemma, which they actually found themselves right back into that dilemma and pushing the country back into the 7th or 8th century. So with regard to what Naya is attempting to say, the 3% of those people who are leading the world, they have a responsibility to pass on some of the wealth, knowledge, training, and ultimately help those who are unable to help themselves in the true way to acquire and to assimilate. Now, I'm saying, and I've said here, there are people who are physically handicapped, mentally handicapped, emotionally handicapped. Those people do need the world's help or community help. Let me bring it closer to home. But if for some reason they become so opposed to learning and understanding and focusing, then they will never be able to assimilate and to reach to their full potential. The world is a place where people should learn, and if they don't, they will be left back. And I just mentioned 3 categories of those who need help. But beyond those 3 categories, the rest suffer from laziness. As a result, they are where they are. Webbo.
Now you finished with him because he said he was going to take you on. So I'm giving you.
Webbo, I'll leave it there, Webbo, because I was taken somewhere else actually.
Okay, so he put in points in the debate on the topics that he should not have.
Something like that, Webbo. I prefer to leave it there.
Unless you should have labeled it differently. Unless he unwilling to challenge those points.
But in all fairness, though, Naya would have said his measurement is, I think, different from yours. He's saying the world as a whole is not in a happy place. Now, you don't measure happiness in dollars and cents. You made reference to the lifestyle, I would imagine, maybe inadvertently, of the people in Afghanistan, characterizing them as if they're barbaric, and I couldn't really make the connection. Because someone else would practice living in a different lifestyle to what you're accustomed to in the Western world does not qualify them as being barbaric. But I'll leave it there. Because someone has money doesn't make them any better than anybody else. So for you to take the 3% who control the world's wealth, the 3% that controls the 90% of the world's wealth, and decide that everybody else is lazy because they have not reached to that level of attainment, as you put it. I just think that we're measuring the wrong metrics. There are people who are surviving on less than, when you compare, because poverty is relative. It's a state of mind as well. It's not just what you have. It's about happiness, and they're trying now to develop indices to decide, what is a happy nation. And so you find that some countries that are practicing a different style, economic style, to what you're accustomed to, people there might be happier than those people who you're making reference to as those people who have the 3%. Those people have the most of the wealth, because we know a lot of cases where people who are rich end up at the end of the day committing suicide, doing all manner of things, and you're like, how someone who has so much wealth reach to this stage where they're dependent on drugs. So happiness, maybe that is an indicator that people ought to pay a little more attention to, rather than just the money that you have in the bank. But that again, I guess is for a different argument for a different time.
That barometer that you have just mentioned regarding money, that is just one thin slice of the cake.
So what other category were you referring to? When you
Academic?
or maybe you should have qualified what you meant when you said the 3%.
Well, we are here and we are not dummies, and as a result, we should be able to figure out and follow what I'm saying without my having to itemize. But at the same time,
But you said 3%. 3% of the world's population. Who are you making reference to? These are the people who work hard. You're suggesting that they work harder than everybody else. Everybody is just lazy because they have not been in the 3% bracket. So what were you using then to measure for this 3%? And that's what I'm asking you to just qualify that, so that I don't get the wrong impression as to what you were trying to convey when you said the 3%. Because when you said 3%, I know, based on what I would have read, that it is a fact that 3%, of the world's wealth is, 90% of the world's wealth is held by 3% of the world's population. So that's why I would have assumed that that's what you're making reference to. But if you're making reference to a different metric that you're measuring, well, maybe that's what I was saying. You don't leave it up to me to assume what you're saying, because maybe I did get it wrong in the first instance.
Sometimes time is not enough for me to elaborate. And
Okay, well, let me see if I can help. Edric, earlier you said, we here are not dummies. You meant you who are in that room? Let me put the camera so the watchers, the viewers will know who is in that room. So when you said we, you were referring to
Naya,
those who are...
Pat,
Yes, and yourself.
and myself.
Okay. And so who are in that room, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And so you did not mean me. So
Well,
I would
well-
qualify as a dummy.
Webbo, you are in another room, but at the same
But that's what
time,
I'm asking.
at the same time, because you're part of the conversation and because you're part of our panel, even though you are the host, you are not a dummy, and therefore you should be able to figure it out, and you have figured it out.
But you agree when you said that you are not a dummy, you didn't say it convincingly.
It depends on the barometer which you're using in terms of
No, you just said to me,
who will figure it out.
you just said to me, Edric,
Mhm.
with me, I am not a dummy, correct?
Quite true.
But what I'm saying is when you said it, you didn't say it in a very convincing manner, as if you don't really believe it.
Well, that is what's in your head. That's what's in your head. Because what I'm saying to partner, you and myself, we are here and we have a certain level of intelligence, and in that regard, we should be able, must be able, and able to figure it out.
Okay, I got you. Now, I promise I would see if I can help. But that was just a sort of little precursor to bring in a little light moment. But I'm listening to discussion with this 3%. And Pat and Naya don't seem to get it from you. So I have framed the question so that maybe, perhaps, just perhaps, it might clarify it. The question is, are you in the 3%?
Yes?
Really?
Yes.
The rest of us are there too?
Webbo, I could be sure to categorize you as being in the 3%, because you're up at dawn, and after dusk you're still up.
Okay, so in that regard.
That is one barometer.
Okay. But just checking. Pat is in the 3%?
Yeah.
I am not up at dawn. So
But there's another.
Morning is not my thing.
But remember, there's more than one parameter.
no. But if that is the qualification, I
No,
don't.
well, I don't want him. I don't want him to say what is. That's acceptable to me. Naya is in the 3%.
Sure.
Okay, I got you. I won't go any further with that.
And maybe because we're all friends.
No. Naya is not a lazy person.
What are friends for? Okay, now I wanted to put on the table something which it falls almost in the discussion that you all started with. I was looking at an interview with, I wouldn't say who the person was, but except to say in terms of name, but it was one of the former West Indies cricketers who was very, very successful and came from one of the small islands in the early days. I just wanted to say that. And in that interview, he was asked a particular question, which I'm going to ask of the panel as well. And you having given me your response, I will tell you what his response was to the said question. The question was this: name 2 impediments that you see that is facing the development of our youth. 2 impediments that you see facing the development of our youth today. Edric, you want to go first? Any 2? What do you think?
They are disobedient and off course, meaning off focus.
Disobedient and off focus. Naya,
Off course.
two impediments, two difficulties.
I think financial and financial. I see that one, and difficulty. It's
Anything that you see is, is
Impediment.
causing.
impedes them.
Challenges.
Yeah.
Well,
if-
secularity.
Oh?
Secularity.
Secularity. And it would have been okay if you only had one. Dr. Bartlett?
What I would have observed is the attitude, the general attitude, and lack of guidance. Those are just two.
Okay, when you say attitude, you mean negative,
For the most part.
yes, and lack of guidance. Okay, so the person is not from Nevis, from another, it's one of the Leeward Islands, and they work very, very hard. They're probably in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. And I just mentioned those to show you. That person said the two things for him that the greatest impediment to youth development, drugs, and I thought Edric would have said this one, laziness. That was the two things that person said. And
Drugs and laziness.
drugs, the illegal drugs and so on and so forth, and he was
Yes.
mentioning the problems not just in that particular island but the world over that they're having with this people using these drugs and the effects and all these things and robbing the country of the youth and the productivity that the youth can put into the country. And then on the other hand, he found that laziness, and why I said I thought Edric would mention that, because Edric, not just in terms of the youth, overall, because when he was making the points a little earlier, and Dr. Bartlett had repeated it, and he said that he said something about the 3% and everybody else is lazy because they did not achieve certain things and so on. So I found that very interesting. So I thought, well, I'll bring it here and find out what is each person's response in terms of the way they look at the world, in a sense, and some of the big challenges.
Well, let me just say this. The idea that he has identified drugs. I grew up here, and where I first saw a marijuana tree? When I came back here 42 years, after I spent 24 years out, I didn't know. Where I was working, fellows told me there's a tree right at the gate, at the Buccaneer, right at the gate. And upon focusing on Dr. Barnhouse and WIVV after breaking off work, I never had the opportunity, or never took the interest in identifying the tree. So I'm saying to you, drugs became something, a learned negative trait.
Yeah, but that's the point. But that is what he was saying. These are the things that hamper in the positive contribution and development of the youth. That was the point. Yes.
No, I was so afraid of the police. Not afraid in terms of afraid, but not wanting police to ever put their hand on me. That one time I was at the Buccaneer and a lady saw me dancing and got all this energy. So she came up to me and said, "Where do you get this stuff?" "What stuff you talking about?" She said, "Marijuana." I ran to my supervisor and told him, "This lady out there looking for marijuana." So he said, he pointed me to a fellow from Antigua named Big Steve. Tell Steve. Steve was able to see the lady and actually got stuff for her. Now, because I was always afraid of the police in terms of not wanting them to ever put their hand on me, I was never entertained by the thought of doing drugs.
So, in other words, the example you're giving, the story you're telling, you misread the play.
Not really.
But you obviously misread the play, Edric.
You use the word obvious, and it's a strong word.
Okay, let me take out obvious. You misread the play. Look, you see, Dr. Bartlett is laughing because she knows Dr. Bartlett, didn't he misread the play?
Webbo, I ain't getting it to you, sorry.
But I can take this. I read the play in that you're giving me your support on that. So you don't have to.
But as it relates to the drugs and the laziness that the person, the interviewee, would have alluded to or would have made reference to, I don't know if he went on to explain the circumstances, because what I see here is a direct correlation between, and I think that it has been borne out, that there's a correlation between, it depends on the drug that you're using, and there's a correlation between the drugs and the effects that the drugs would have on you. So if someone were on drugs, then let's say marijuana, and that is something that slows you down, then obviously if you're talking about the same set of people, the same cohort, that would be naturally something that you would expect. So if you have a bunch of kids and they're doing drugs, you expect them to be lazy. Not all who are lazy are on drugs, and not all who are most of who are on drugs may be lazy. But it's not fair though to paint a brush to say that the issue, and mind you, that was just an observation that he would have made. In our circumstances, we do acknowledge that we have a drug use issue, and I think that is something that throughout the world is repeated, everywhere you go. That is a natural iteration, I think, wherever you go, drugs in Nevis, drugs in Simkits, drugs in Montserrat, drugs all over. The level of drug use, though, is what may be important. Because wherever you go, anytime people get into the use of drugs, of course it's going to hamper your productivity. But outside of that, though, I think that those people who are lazy without the influence of drugs, sometimes they have been mischaracterized. You have a lot of kids, they're not necessarily lazy, but they lack the motivation. They lack the motivation for whatever reason. And it goes back to how we interact and the programs that we have to engage these kids. If you're going to try to engage a kid in football, but he wants to play volleyball, but there are no facilities to play volleyball, and so he doesn't engage in football, so he say, oh, he's lazy. But the thing is, we must create the opportunities, and so kids must have a diverse, plate, or buffet, so to speak, to choose from. When they go up to the buffet line, they should be able to choose whether they want to do this or that, and I think sometimes that is what is lacking in our society, the opportunities.
No, first, before we go on, I want to say that when he gave the response, he wasn't necessarily tying both together. He was asked to name two things.
Yes.
The person could have said 3 or 4 or 5. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the two things were tied together, and as a consequence of one, there is the other. Because were the question being put, name one thing.
Yeah, but
you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I see.
So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying that without him trying to understand, I was just trying to make the point, though, that sometimes if you have drug use in a particular group, it is likely that they would be less enthusiastic about things that are going on around, and you make just categories that as being lazy. What about maybe Nayak, wants to.
Well, I wanted to say that I totally agree with the individual. Laziness, some people are lazy.
Some.
Some people are lazy, and how do we define that? But I think you're lazy because you're not putting out sufficient effort. You're lazy because you're not making use in a serious way of the ongoing time. You're lazy because you lack motivation, and you basically is sluggish in your approach. Talking about drug use, of course, that can mess with any individual. Once it gives you a false sense of hope. For those who use drugs to improve their performance, that's a false sense of hope. You're going to crash somewhere along the line. And for those who use drugs, and because of using drugs, they're lazy, they're sluggish. Of course, you're going to get nothing done. And that's why I use the word, what did I say? What word did I use? But I did say secularity. That's the word that I use. And I think that kind of embraces drug use and all that, because it deals with trend, the trendy things of the world that tends to consume the youth sometimes, that really get them nowhere, in a sense, so they find it difficult to really find an objective to cling on to and to put their time and efforts into. So yes, I totally, but I think secularity is something, because there's so much trend these days that's happening, and in many cases is really ignorance. It's not really happening. It doesn't really contribute to that kind of support you need going forward if you're really going, thinking of an objective and working hard towards it. People in sports really got to be very disciplined and be mindful of such things as drugs. And you're not going to get anywhere if you're lazy. You got to work hard when it comes to sports.
Look, well, let me just say this. I know that growing up, we used to play cricket with stones. Pat mentioned a plethora of things from which the kids should be able to choose. If you are obedient, you will listen to those people who are attempting to guide you. And if you are off course or off focus, you would miss the mark in terms of choosing something that would motivate you. We, our generation, came up and we found something meaningful to do. We were able to listen and obey our parents, which is the first rule of heaven. Obedience. And therefore, if you are obedient, you will follow, you will learn, and you will assimilate. If you are off course or off focus, you will not be able to hone in on the right attitude. And this, of course, being off course or off focus embodies the whole 9 yards of human development.
Well, if I may persist in the argument, we and I'm just going to touch the drug thing, just one point I want to make on it, and then I move on. In drugs, we have those that are performance-enhancing drugs, which really, a lot of people who are into sports, they're into that kind of thing, into performance-enhancing drugs. So that would not necessarily make them lazy, right? So I concede that drugs either way could be a good thing. Well, let me not categorize it as a good thing, but could be something that enhances your performance, or you could dull your performance. But outside of that, though, and I want to continue on the vein that I started on, in that kids just don't have the wider way of activities to choose from, and I think that it's about time that we tried to, as a society, try to get kids, our kids, because in other places, when you look at the Olympics, we might just send people there just to run. That's the only thing they do. Within recent times, I think maybe someone was training javelin or shot put or something like that. We don't really see those kind of other skills being developed amongst our youth. And so all the boys, you want them to play football, or you want them to play cricket, and if they don't, just say they come on the field because teacher forced them. Those are the only two activities they have, and so they just don't have the enthusiasm, you know. And I don't like the idea of ascribing to them a title that says that they're lazy. Sometimes if you really found a niche, or they really found a niche, they could excel. But I'm saying that our kids are being stunted because they just do not have the diversity in activities, and we need to do better than that.
Look, well, in school, cricket was the thing, and if you, for some reason, can't develop the likeness for cricket, which is the national sport, then you're off course, you're off focus.
No.
You're off course. Again, if you sit in front of the classroom, sit in the class and don't listen to your teacher, you're off course.
Yeah, but
you're off focus.
Yeah, but there was
and
some.
as a result, once you are attentive and listen, you will learn, and ultimately you will have the aptitude to choose, and choose wisely.
Yeah, but there was some who was not playing the sports. Was not when we get the recess, they don't go and play the cricket. Mm-hmm. But in the class, they work hard. They're the one who's studying hard, and they are good. They are showing that interest. So you know, it's hard to really be too absolute about people sometimes, especially at a certain age and stage in life.
If you want to be an all-rounder, you have to look at where the rest of those who are in the leadership roles and follow. You want to be like them. Be motivated by what they do and follow.
Not necessarily. A lot of people in leadership role, not necessarily because they really want to do good for humanity.
Well, I'm talking about
some people it's just about money.
At the lower end. I was talking about school. You know, in school.
Oh, in school. Oh, okay. Yeah. In school. Okay, but people pursue different things depending. It's inherent in people what it is they're gonna have a likeness for. You can't force me to like cricket. You can't force me to like netball. Those were things that I grew up playing, and I developed a likeness for them. But it's not fair for kids now who are sitting in front of TV, watching the Olympics, seeing a lot of different activities, and like, oh, I like to see that, or I would like to be a gymnast, but they cannot develop that. But that is what they're drawn to. And so just because they're not engaging in the sport that you decide that they should be engaging, you cannot, and it's not fair for you to then say, this people here lazy. That's not right.
And let me just add again, notwithstanding that the person was a cricketer, he was not referencing the fact that the youths don't play cricket, that they are lazy, right? Yeah. He was speaking overall in terms of development and contribution to the society as a whole. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted that to make clear as well, so that, you know, we don't really correlate them. So I just want to go back to my point earlier, though, that so Edric, you didn't read the play.
I did read the play.
Oh, okay. Well, no, this is Edric.
I'm saying to you.
No, this is Edric.
But let me tell you, you and Pat concluded that I didn't read the play.
Sorry, not me.
All right.
I stood neutral on the matter.
But you know you were working with me.
All right.
Caller, please call.
I read the play because I mentioned the call is on?
No, we lost them. Okay. Please call back. You go ahead, Edric.
I was focusing on the fact that this lady who was looking for a high, as the case.
Yeah, but I got you. Once you read the play, you just were throwing us off course. But Edric, I can understand why they label you a super heavyweight. You hardly you hardly miss anything. You read the play, but you sent her. I think I gotta get a break. This is Talk That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Naya Liver, and Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. We'll be back after these.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
From Queen City, Nevis, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, Vaughan Radio.
Back on this episode of Talk That Get Results with Dr. Patricia Bartlett, Conrad Naya Liber, Edric W. Stanley. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Let's go to the lines. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Webbo. Good evening, Naya and Dr. Bartlett and Mr. Stanley. Everybody, good evening. I'm enjoying the program as usual. And I'm going to say something here. In school, in the classroom, the one who sits right in front of the teacher up front, he learns much faster and quicker than the one who way back in the back. Because from my experience in the back, you're doing all kind of thing in the class, fighting cock and hen, knocking drum, and playing mass with and bull, all kind of thing in there. When the teacher came at you, she asked you what did she say just now? You can't tell her because you are, of course.
Exactly.
You're right. So therefore, when a child say, look, I soon leave school and I ain't learn nothing yet, let me go in front where I must learn, I have to learn. Example, I am the biggest example of that. And I start to learn, but you see, a person can be what they want to be if they have the love for it. Check out in St. Kitts here, my thing was racing bicycle in Warner Park. We never had a track yet except grass.
Exactly.
But we went to Canada in 1978 Commonwealth Games. Very first time I ride on a cycle velodrome. And I wondering how I can go up there, I can fall. But in the little short 3 weeks of time we had up there, we did well. So if we had the facilities, with the love and passion that I had for the sport, I would have been like those guys in France or whatnot. And in school, like Mr. Stanley said, we used to play cricket, bat and ball with stone. And look how talented the Caribbean people are. We cut bicycle through, cut them up and make cricket ball. And Nevis, because of that, Nevis has produced a lot of great cricketers from that kind of ball there that they play with. So when they get the good ball now, that's where they come so good. So if you want to learn something, you will put your interest in it and your time, and you will find that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for listening.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Well, let me just pivot a little.
Yeah, let me get this first. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Webber and all of your guests.
Good evening.
Now I want to agree with Dr. Bartlett. You know, I was listening to the news today and they were talking about Jamaica sending youth to some games. I don't know if it's Pan Am Games or something like that. And they have introduced a number of new sports. And I think if we were to give some of them a try, because everybody can run. You know, she said volleyball, there are other things, hockey, you know. So if you begin to introduce these new games, you will attract more young people to sports. So sometimes the lack of interest is that the lack of what we call they're not interested because they want to do something else. So maybe what we should do, the Olympic Association start to think of introducing new games. Jamaica was bobsleigh and so. But I mean, you get snow on the Blue Mountain in Jamaica, and some of the place cold. But they don't have no snow.
Right.
So we have got to expand the offerings. Now, yesterday, was the seniors, the elderly. The month of the elderly is this month. And I'm an elderly, but that's what we call old people now. And I want to, commend all of those who are still trying to make a contribution. And I want to encourage others to remember the seniors, as we call them. And today is World Teachers Day. I want to commend all the teachers. I thought for most of my life, even when I was working as a statistician, I taught in the evening. So to all of the teachers, and I have two teachers alive, people who taught me. One taught me in grade 5. A lady named Miss Doris Archer Adams. She going for her 100, but she taught me in grade 5, and she taught me to love maths. In those days when they give long division, it take all the 2 pages. Like 6 numbers into 7 numbers, She used to give us all of those in standard 5. So I do appreciate an Elenita Nathaniel, where she taught us history in Bass's senior school. But she was almost as old as us. She had just come out of high school to teach. So there might have been maybe 2 or 3 years between us and her. So to all of the teachers and all of my with compatriots who went to college with me, the last time I called in, I made a mistake. It is Marilyn Liebert. You all know Marilyn Liebert, right? Marilyn Liebert, the teacher?
Yes.
I had said the lady who died, but somebody called me and said, no, it's Marilyn and you all and us went to school. Celia Johnson, a number of those who went to college with me have passed. James Neal, Cecil Sutton, and things like that. So to all of the teachers from preschool to university, we do appreciate you, and you have made a great contribution to nation building. All right then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good shout out.
Yeah, Webbo, as she said about the month of the elder persons, it is also Financial Literacy Month. I think it's Breast Cancer Month as well. No, October is a very active month as it relates to, all these different groups that ought to be acknowledged during this period of time. I don't know if at some point someone say, the year almost finished, let me just make sure that, we put in as many people in this month as possible. But it's a lot for us to absorb and a lot for us to celebrate for the month of October. But while we're on Financial Literacy Month, I remember making a post just a couple of days ago, and I'm appealing to the Nevis Island administration to get with the program as it relates to financial literacy, because I for one, I am not satisfied the position that we're in as it relates to our macro economy and the spending habits and things like that. So I'm appealing to everybody. I know because of the rough times, people have been told to trim the lamp, so to speak, and people have been very harsh in dealing with some people who have fallen on hard times, suggesting that maybe these people just did not put aside enough to be comfortable at a period of time like this. But who could have anticipated that the economy would have been shut down for 18 months? That's a whole year and a half, going on 2 years. Who really have the financial resources and to plan, who would have planned, with that kind of leeway to be able to withstand such a shock for such a long period of time. And I think this period of time calls for solidarity. We need to recognize that there are some people who are working hard. They're not necessarily what you call lazy people. They go out every day and they work, but the salaries that they receive, they can hardly live a decent life and still put aside something, and so this is a time that I don't think that we should be talking down to single mothers. We should be doing as much as we can to help them, or any other category of persons who find themselves in financial hardships, because as a matter of fact, we're not doing so well as an island, So I'm just encouraging everyone to try to be understanding, be empathetic. Remember that, these times are unusual times. Let us start sharing what we have instead of looking down on the people who just did not have enough to put aside to weather the storm. And if we do that, I think we can all get through, But I am calling on the Nevis Island administration in particular to stop wasting money, and prioritize, and I'm calling for them to prioritize health in particular at a time like this.
Let me get this. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, I found what Dr. Bartlett said very interesting. Waste is different to spend, And when you, just like how in the USA, in times of recession and depression, governments intervene in the economy by undertaking infrastructure programs. You listen to the U.S. Senate, you would hear how much trillion they plan to spend on infrastructure, not because they just want to fix them, but they provide a certain amount of unemployment, usually unskilled, but it reaches the people at the bottom. So the word waste is a different thing. Waste is when there's no value for what you spend. Now, the small business development
unit.
Mm-hmm. They were advertising this morning on another station that they're offering training, online training free to entrepreneurs, small business. It goes for 7 months. You will be given people to assist you. Maybe Miss Dr. Bassey could take a look at it, because she might be able to recommend it to others. Now, they said you can contact them from their Facebook. I think it's SBDC, SKB. That's your Facebook. And there you will see the different kind of training they're offering. So, so even though, you see, our people, we have to get up. It sounds a kind of harsh, she might think. But if you sit down and do nothing, it's like the story in the Bible with the lepers. So if we sit down here, we die. Go in there, we die. We go down there, we die. We might as well make a move. So if you have an idea, I'm encouraging people to go to the Facebook and apply. It's free. It can be done at your home. And then even after the training, you still have local people or local consultants, if you want to call it, to help you, give you ideas how to make your business better. So rather than sit down and complain, there are things available. And what the financial information month is giving is good information. It is how you use it and how you look at it. Because there are things that we can do even in hard times. It may mean certain things, certain luxuries we have to give up. People have internet and still have data on their phone. You know what I mean? In the short term, you could reduce some of your expenditure. But give it a try. Don't sit down there and, what are we going to do? The government can't help you, I mean, she knows, ask the one in St. Lucia. They walk into a country and the one in Bahamas wondering, what on earth are we going to do? Because outside is one thing, inside is another thing. So encourage people. Webbo, you know about the course?
Yes.
Yeah, please, yes. See if you could, and Dr. Bartlett.
Yeah, well, you see, Carla, I have a different kind of philosophy from most people,
Well,
because I believe in working and complain less.
That's my philosophy too.
And so, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
Webbo, my parents work on the estate, right? The crop lasted 6 months, Even with our great national hero and so, they couldn't do anything. When June or even if the crop went to August, after that you're on your own, until December. Sometimes they used to give 1 day work. 1 day. So you're getting some shillings, or you might get $6. 1 day, sometimes no work at all. You think anybody was sitting there and ball? Who you ever got a ball to? You come ball to Mr. Westaka here, know nothing. The country was poor. But there are opportunities, there are things that people can do. And the younger people use the internet. There's a lot of things that you can do. Lot of courses you could take. You could retool yourself. This is what you must say to our people. Rather than, Lord, poor you. Your mother made it through. They said, Nevis had no payday. You have anybody in Nevis starving?
Quite true.
We got to instill hope in our young people. We're talking about young people. What happened to them? They stand up on the corner all day and they go home and they eat. And they watch the TV and they cock up on the internet. Now, if they didn't have access to these things, they would put more effort into it. That's the problem, you know? Easy access to what they want.
Quite true.
All right, then.
Okay, thank you.
The ruling spendthrift is no longer proud. Kindred there and had his claims allowed.
That's one of your poems. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Webbo,
Yes.
hold on there. Let them motorcycle pass. You know your program cannot start and finish without a light moment.
Yes.
Mr. Stanley is a pilot, right?
Yes.
Maybe he got experience of flying plane, but you know he's the only pilot ever fly a plane and the plane crash and he ain't dead. In school he make a lot of plane out of book leaf from the back, and then he launch him from the back and they go hit the blackboard and the teacher got the duck. Plane crash in the school and he get licks, but he ain't dead. Okay then, thanks.
Okay.
Now, we, as a financial analyst, I, at many occasions, showed people how much money they would have earned between 25 and 65 using the United States mail as a barometer in terms of longevity. And you would be surprised, some of them were surprised, as to how much money they would have made over that 40-year period. As a result.
Edric, can I get back to you? Let me take this call. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, and to the continent lady, Patricia.
Good evening.
Good evening, you know.
Caller, could you speak a little louder? Put your mouth up, closer to the mouthpiece.
Yes, I hear I didn't know the woods, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little better.
That jobs is something that goes to a factory process. You know what I mean? So you can categorize marijuana as no job, you know what I mean? And to the lady Patricia here, she's wonderful. And she have a deep meditation, you know what I mean? Yeah, respect.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Stanley, go ahead.
And as a result, I am advising people, you live within your means. And if you begin to practice that, and it becomes perfect at a certain point in time, you discipline yourself, and you spend no more than you have to. And like the lady just called and mentioned, they got Facebook account, they got Twitter account, or 2 phones, 3 phones. You can't cry because you don't have the wherewithal. But if you look at what you have earned and save something from what you have earned, you will be in a better place financially. The lack of discipline caused, again, the willing spendthrift to spend. And if he sees how he could cut and contrive, as my mother used to say, they would always have. Fortunately, I took on that mantle at a very early age. I gave my sister $2.50 when she was leaving for England. As a boy, those are practices that I found myself.
Your sister knows that you gave her?
Oh, well, I reminded
You
her.
reminded her because she didn't know. Good evening, thank you for holding.
She pretended to
Good
forget.
evening.
She pretended she forgot. Yes, good evening. Yes, go
Good
ahead.
evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
One of the essential things that we need on this island to restart this economy is job creation. Job creation can come from several sources, one of which is foreign direct investment. Because if we rely on funds that are already on the island, we are just spinning our tops in mud. The funds are already there. Okay. So our government would have to go out and solicit foreigners to bring their money here to spend. That's just one way. A second idea is a fiscal one. Right now we have corporations paying 33% on their net income. If that rate, the corporate tax rate, would be reduced on condition that corporations would expand their employment. I'm just picking some numbers out here. Let's say for every 5 additional people employed, we reduce your tax rate 1%. Somebody will have to do a deeper study to recommend more precise numbers. See, and as more people are employed, that's more money available to spend in the local economy. I'm just 2 ideas I believe would resuscitate this dead economy and get things moving again. We have to look at more foreign investment, and we have to reduce the corporate income tax on condition that they employ a lot more people in the establishment. So let us put out 2 ideas that I'll offer, and I'll have a list right now.
Okay, thank you.
That program is in place. There's no question about it, and the Prime Minister has mentioned it over and over. Once you keep on certain number of employees, you get a certain tax break. And they're always out there looking for foreign investment. Foreign investment is coming in not at the rate as it used to be. It's at a much lower level now, but at the same time, they're still out there pounding the pavement.
Who?
The leaders.
Really? We're not seeing it. Well, we're not seeing any result.
Nothing happens before it's time.
Stanley, we've been hearing that now forever. That was even a campaign thing. That, the boat was out in the stream with the foreign investors to come in. And we've heard that before. But over the past 4 years, we have not seen anything materialize. So I don't know, you're speaking, abstractly, I would imagine.
No, you look here and here, and you would see 1 or 2 foreign investors. It may not be a large hotel, it may not be a large factory, but at the same time, you would still see.
It's not moving the needle. It's not moving the needle. What we're seeing is negligible based on what we were promised.
Well, here, promised.
Okay, let me just take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, good night again, Webbo. Now, Dr. Bartlett, capital goes after profits. Right now, the state of the world economy is not conducive to the movement of capital. You got to face it as it is plain straight economics. In all of the markets, you hear people worried about the US dollar, the debt. What would happen if they default on the debt? If you are an investor, you will think twice before you go and invest your money when the possibility of retrieving it with profits and not just scraping profits Capital move where there's high profits. So until the economies of the world, not think it, not America alone, right now they're looking at China, what would happen? The other day China was one of their real estate thing was thinking about defaulting. And everybody said, look, if this happens, we're going to another recession. This is worldwide. So most of the people who have our citizenship, they're in Asia and those places there. They are looking for safe places where they can invest their money and earn high interest, high profit, I must say rather. That is a reality. So while our leaders are looking, they got to look well hard. Which market here is booming? In America, we have a lot of growth. It's down to the bottom, the KFC and the McDonald's, and so that's where the work is, you know. That's where the work is. When last year some new investment in America. They talk about the car, the Tesla cars. They plan to bring out so many. They have to cut it. The demand out there is not up. Much more saying it when so many people are working. You know, hotels here have been built and can't even open. So why would anybody coming up with the next one? All right then.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I should answer, but I want to, since the caller called back, I just made a note of what she would have mentioned on the first call, the call before this one, which I think was the second call, her second call. She was talking about when you have times like these, when the economy is depressed, that you invest in infrastructure and all that. But the thing is, we have to recognize, and she's the economist, not me, but we have to recognize that infrastructure does not necessarily just mean physical infrastructure. We have a social infrastructure as well, and we can use some of the monies that are available to us to put into our social infrastructure. What we've been doing is the little monies that have been available to us, we've been putting into roads, but I don't see that many people, additional employment being generated in that regard. So to say that we're stimulating the economy, I think it's a false concept or precept. I don't understand why people think that just because government say they're going to invest in roads, that they're necessarily spending any extra money as it relates to improving the economy. Because in other places one could understand, and I would always agree, that if you're talking about infrastructural development in the United States at the level at which they're proposing, one is going to see a lot of activity, economic activity revolving around that, because most of the inputs are generated there. In our case, most of our inputs, apart from the little labor that goes into it, most of our inputs are imported. So it doesn't impact us in the same way that it would an American economy, or a larger economy that would have different components to it. Here we either service or we're into tourism all of it. We just service for the most part of it. We don't have enough in going into the infrastructure development, I think, to make a significant impact. And so we still have a lot of poor people in here. We're getting even more, and the people who need help most at a time like this are not getting it. I am not the one who is suggesting that we could go out today and find foreign investors, because I recognize worldwide that is a challenge.
Okay, let me just take this, Dr. Bartlett. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening. The caller a while ago spoke about government investment. The figures over the past 4 years of the Nevis Island administration indicate that Nevis's debt, Nevis's public debt, has increased over 30% in the past 4 years. Now, we expect governments to be in debt. That's no problem. The question is, what is that debt used for? Is that debt used to finance foreign local capital investment, or government operations? If it's used to finance government operation, there's no return because it's consumed right away. And what we see here is some exorbitant, wasteful expenditure by the Navy Island administration. If the debt incurred were invested in capital projects, we could see long-term benefits. All right, we have children coming up to school every year, and there are no capital investment to employ them. But more and more, we see government recurring expenditures are increasing, and there's no added performance to justify those debt increases that have been incurred for recurring expenses. We have to take a deeper look at what's happening in this little small 36 square mile island. It's colossal waste on recurrent expenses. We don't see much capital investment that would last or that would benefit the long term. That needs to be addressed, and the folks, when they have decisions to make, will make the appropriate decisions and put people in place that will represent the interests of this island properly. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Look, there is the Taiwan project over at Pinis. That is foreign investment backed by some semblance of expenditure coming from the Navy Island administration. That is one project that I can readily identify. Dion, I already call his name, has had people coming in. I'm not sure exactly what his total program is, but I recognize that he has put down a structure, and I've seen people who are not of our color parading through, which means it's like people are interested in Nevis and attempting to invest, and that money is not coming from local banks in the true sense of the word. They got to bring in their capital, they got to bring in, but it is not a large scale as we are just emerging out of this pandemic. Slowly, gradually, but we will get there maybe in the next year or two. But at the same time, people who would say that there is nothing at all going on, they need to pull the wool from over the eye and face reality. Nothing happened before its time.
You know, Webbo, I think Nevis would be happy to be the recipient of some direct foreign investment, for certain. But this has been something going on for a number of years, like long time before the pandemic. We just haven't been able to attract any foreign investments here in any real significant way, really. And we have spoken about that here, and I wonder if really that really should be the emphasis, but I suppose that should be one of the areas we always be, looking forward to. But it has not been happening. It hasn't been happening. When you look across the Caribbean, you see other islands, being, attracting some foreign, by whatever means they've been using. They're being able to attract some foreign investment. St. Kitts, I understand, with the money, passport money, the government has been partnering with investors and so forth, and Nevis have not had the benefit of that. That's what I've been told. But the truth is we have not really been attracting any foreign investors for a number of years. When you look at the hotels we've been seeing here, we see Four Seasons almost 30 years ago, and we see some renovation at Paradiso, but nothing like the other islands in the Caribbean. I'm sure over in St. Kitts we've seen many hotels come in the last 10 years and throughout the Caribbean, but Nevis have not been able to attract that foreign investment. Is a serious consideration, because apart from the promises they always make about that, we we need that really, because I don't see any emphasis being placed in any other areas of diversification. So yes, we see a bit happening down at the Pinnis Beach area, but it's certainly not sufficient, and it's not impacting the way we like it to impact. And I'm hoping that coming up soon, and I know it's a difficult time, no one is investing much these days, the pandemic and everything else, but I think I'm hoping that very soon that something can happen for Nevis, because it's been happening all around us, and it's just not happening here in terms of foreign investment and creating some employment for the people. I hope we are not our own enemy on this matter. I sometimes ask myself, I mean, with the unity arrangement, what had some people wear when they're negotiating?
Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, Webbo. Some people might think, well, then, that a building with blocks and cement and sand is the only investment. Recently, you had some people come to Nevis to shoot some movies. How many persons in Nevis did they employ? One or none? Thank you, Webbo.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Webbo, that's okay for us, eh? It's not okay for us. It's not okay for us. Too often, I am hearing that type of thing coming out of our sister island. Sometimes I sometimes think of if they are some kind of mercenary trying to make things look all well and hearty over here. I don't know for whose benefit or what, but let's get real. Let's get real about Nevis, and we're asking for more.
Okay.
A long time before the pandemic, so don't come with this little thing and feel like, yes, it's enough for us.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. Now, let me ask a question. Because he asked a pertinent question. What impact, if any, has the nature of your land ownership have on the ability to attract large-scale investment? Because, unlike saying it, if you check out a lot of the investment, the land were government owned, When the government couldn't own it, the government acquired it, like over at Peninsula. The government took over people's land to give them to put down Park Hyatt. So in Nevis, and I think they should when they're marketing, if you say St. Kitts has an international airport, it's supposed to be St. Kitts and Nevis has an international airport. That sells better. How do I get from here to there? But in my mind, I always wonder, would the locals be willing to sell some of their lands to a foreign investor to put down, whether a factory or something? What is it, Mr. Stanley, into real estate, right?
Well, the government can do the same thing the government had done on St. Kitts, acquired land, can they?
Yep.
Now, how does the people themselves feel? How do the Namibians feel about it?
Look, we are open
Because at least I think you all are better beaches than us, right?
Well,
we are a better tourist product.
We are
Are you all the richer tourists?
We are naturally a better tourist product.
Lord have mercy. What more you want then?
but we, those of us who are into
But
real
think about
estate,
it seriously, though, You have some good sites, but they are owned by people.
That has not been an impediment. That has not been an issue for us. That has not been an impediment as far as I know. It has not been an impediment. Nevis people would sell the clothes that they have on. Some of us.
Degrading like that.
No. That is not a degrading statement. I'm just trying to suggest to you that we take opportunity, take advantage of opportunities when they're presented.
So what reason you get cannot be just the government. It has to be something.
No, but you can't stay and sing it and make up a reason. You can't sit where you're at and say in Nevis it's because it's the people own the land, because that is not, from what I understand, living in Nevis is not an impediment to be doing business here. Maybe we do business slower than everybody else. There are other issues that maybe we need to address.
And what I get from what I understand, right, is that the visitors themselves desire to keep Nevis what they call pristine. That to me is a bad sell. If it was so like that, Nevis is unchanged and what, if that is what you're selling, then you can't have mass tourism like what you have in St. Kitts.
Who is advocating for that?
But
who on the panel has been advocating for mass tourism?
Well, you want more, you want like in St. Kitts.
I don't think that is the point that Naya was trying to make.
Think about it. The image out there about Nevis. Nevis is different to St. Kitts. They don't have no crowd. These are things to take into consideration. Have you sold yourself like that? I don't mean you, eh? I mean the tourist board. All right then.
Okay, thank you.
I think it is safe to say that we have a caretaker government in Nevis that is supposed to be looking after policies that would drive, economic development in Nevis, separate and apart from St. Kitts. If indeed they're doing a good enough job, I don't think that I'm saying that. I don't think Naya is saying that. Stanley probably would say that for whatever reason. But living in Nevis, we're just not seeing it. And a caller had called earlier to suggest that if government is incurring debt just for recurring expenditure, that is not good enough, having been every year increasing the level of the debt. It's not fair that you're telling Nevis people to take on more debt, but there's no development to associate with this additional debt that you're placing the country in. And I think that is one of the vexing issues for some of us. It can't be fair that you take on the government would balloon the employment with people who just party hackers. It is not fair. You can't take on somebody as an advisor, paying $9,000 a month, and there's no justification for it. And is the rest of Nevis has to pay for that? That can't be right. Not when you're saying that you're struggling to meet monthly expenses. And those are the kind of things that those are things that I would categorize in the basket that the lady called and made reference to about waste, and she's saying that waste means that there's no value for what you're spending money on, and something like that, taking on an additional advisor, that is something that I categorize as waste, because there's no value for spending an extra $9,000 just to secure somebody. These are the kind of spending we're talking about. We're not seeing it. You spend it. Indeed, there is justification maybe for spending a little more in the economy at a time like this, but it must impact most of the people, because at the end of the day, divisions have to pay for it. And like Naya said, it is not good enough for us just to say, okay, well, we have some people running around shooting movies. What impact is it going to have on the lives and the livelihood of people in Nevis? Nevis people are not seeing it, we're not feeling it. Okay, a couple of people maybe, I don't know how many people, but if you listen to some people in government talk, you swear that everybody is impacted by this movie industry. But that for me is a fallacy. I mean, I don't see it, I don't feel it. I live in Nevis every day. I see people struggling, and we need to, I think, start to invest. And I would feel better about a debt that would have been incurred over the period of time that we're talking about, COVID, for 18 months, had it been that we were addressing the needs of the ordinary man who has not been working for 18 months. Let them get something. It can't be the same set of people that have been working for 18 months getting more. You're increasing the salaries, not necessarily the salaries, you're increasing the fees for all different things, just so that just a certain segment of the population could continue to live comfortable while the others continue to struggle. That cannot be fair. You're telling me that government is borrowing to pay for civil servants. Nobody has ever lost $1 in the civil service. Not $1. But those of us, or the entire population, has to pay just so that you can increase the debt to pay those people, so only their livelihoods are to be secured. But the ordinary man who would have been working in the tourism industry for 18 months has been struggling, and there's been no investment in the social infrastructure of this country. That cannot be right, or this island. This can't be right.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening. I'd like to follow up on Dr. Bartlett's comment. In terms of proper fiscal management, nobody, whether in the private or public sector, borrows long-term to meet short-term recurring expenses. Short-term recurring expenses must or should be met by recurring revenues. And long-term borrowing is to finance capital projects that would have a long-term benefit. So what this government is doing, borrowing to pay salaries, is utter mismanagement. All right? And then when generations after would have to pay this debt back, when that would have benefited generations have gone long past. It is just mismanagement of public funds. You don't borrow long term to meet short term expenses. If you and I might add, it's obvious that we have a government here with a civil service that is bloated, and you find you go to a lot of these offices and somebody is indicating that your presence is disturbing them rather than coming to give you the service for which you're paying. So don't tell me that you must borrow. You must borrow to meet recurring expenses. If I have a light bill, I don't go down to banking town to ask for a loan to pay my light bill, to pay my water bill. No. Those bills must be paid from the recurring money I'm making. Okay? I'm about to build a house. That's a long-term expense, the long-term benefit. So this government has mismanaged our resources. And again, I call on individuals to replace this government at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Well, to be honest, the federal government has placed...
Let me just take this and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Stanley. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, this is my last comment. Are we assuming that the government should lay off the people now? What is the U.S. raising the loans for? They're raising them to give away, to keep people from dying, snow coming. This is atom. If you listen to the programs, I don't think sometimes we understand the economics. If they borrow to pay the civil servants, it's wrong. Now, if the government took a decision like some countries, I think in Barbados and different, and start to give them bonds for the pay, who will be making the most noise? People can eat bonds. Every civil servant who is working has a household also to feed and relatives. It's consumption you're talking about, you know. In good times, I say no. If the economy is doing good, they should be able to find work in the private sector. A lot of the extra advisors, to me, sometimes they're a waste of time. I agree with that. But to come and say, the government borrowed, you want the economy crash altogether? Wait, imagine in your mind that this government decide, all right, we don't have the money to pay the wages, so we're not going to borrow it. You hear what Gaston Brown is saying? I don't think we just listen, you know. I don't think we understand what we're saying. So what they must do, what exactly are they to do? The last caller, lay them off to join the gang of the unemployed? Ask yourself the question. When the economy picks up, then they will have to, they are the ones who will pay the debt. Now, back to Ms. Bartlett. Are you aware of the number of social services available to our people? Some of them getting 500 and still on step. That ain't 8 something. I mean, we got to be honest.
You can run a household on 8 something?
It's up
How
to
many?
1,000.
You can run a household on 8 something?
Tighten your belt.
Not only more than not.
Tighten your belt.
People in America, people in the big USA want to not. Remember that they gave them 300 extra, then they said that come off. Then they plan to take away a lot of the services. We can't cope. We are being political but unreasonable.
That is not
Imagine
being...
you getting 800 a month, and a man can't earn a penny because the ships ain't coming. And you gonna make them kind of remarks? That's why our people are ungrateful. too demanding and unreasonable. And I want to suggest what exactly is the government to do with this bloated civil servant, as you say. What exactly are they to do at this time? I know what they could do when things pick up. Some people will live on their own to seek higher wages in the private sector, but what exactly are they to do? If Mark Brantley said at the end of this month, no money there, what would be the NRP's response?
You're trying to make everything political. Every discussion here. No. We were looking at the situation. No. It is an objective. No. I made an objective observation as to what is going on here. For me, it was not political. 2 years ago, I would have made the same statement. All of a sudden, it's political. But it's not, for me, it is not something political. We're looking at the situation as is. You're talking about parity. You're looking at somebody with $800 in the US, what they could buy, as opposed to $800 in the East. A dollar is a dollar in every port. Here, the cost of living is much higher than compared to in the US, especially for basic goods. But I just threw that in there. I am not running the government. I cannot tell them what to do now. But what I would have done had I been in this situation, since you want to make it political, is that roads for me would not be a priority. You cannot make roads your priority in a time like this. And that has been my cry now for the past couple of weeks, because I see that the things that ought to be done in healthcare are not being done because the excuse is that there's no money. Things that ought to be done in the schools are not being done because the excuse is there's no money. But yet we are doing roads. And your justification for that is that, oh, well, in the other places, when it is a recession, you increase your roads and all that. But I'm like, it's not the same thing here. It doesn't work the same way in others. So I'm saying, if we have to borrow for something, I don't mind us borrowing, but it must be something that we're borrowing for that makes sense, that impact most of us, not just some of us.
There is a safety net brought about by the federal government where a certain amount, maybe $1,000, is given to those people who are unemployed or were unemployed, as the case might be. And in that regard, there is something that they're getting on a monthly basis to keep them afloat. So I cannot sit here and hear some dissertation regarding nobody's getting any help, or that level of people are not getting any help, when in fact they are, because the Prime Minister has said that they have paid out 15 million. These are hard numbers. These are real numbers. And that 15 million has been divided among maybe 300 households, as the case might be. So is he lying?
Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. First off, let me point out that we've gone through economic hard times or inflection points before. In 2005, 2006, when the sugar industry closed and thousands were out of a job. Okay, we had to come up with something fast, and we did. The revamped CBI came into existence, and to this day it remains a pillar of the economy. I think that is what is needed now. Some novel new idea that fundamentally change the dynamic, okay, and spur new investment and growth, right? Really and truly, we should not be quibbling about whether or not we have enough investment right now in Nevis. It should be obvious. If we did, I mean, the place would have been booming. You would have felt it. And I doubt very much if you can say that that is the case right now. I think that the government has gone overboard with this handout thing even before COVID. Okay? They were changing the psyche of the country, and income redistribution is one thing, but these programs should never become a staple in any society.
to the extent that they have. It is unnatural and it's unsustainable. Okay? For government to be boasting about thousands that are on these kinds of programs, to me it actually represents a failure of government, not a success. Government is supposed to provide the atmosphere and the conditions and an enabling environment to reduce, not expand these programs. Right? If they can't attract local and foreign investment, then if they can't design programs and policies that promote growth and expand the entrepreneurial sector, then it's doing something wrong. Okay? If it can't operate in a way that reduces and not expands the size of government to make for more efficiency in the delivery of services, then they have failed in its duty. Okay? I know this is a peculiar time and government intervention was necessary during COVID, but we had these problems before COVID, you know. Okay? And it seems as if now they're becoming more institutionalized, and that is not a good thing for the psyche and the enterprise of our people. Okay? If government can find money for these programs, it suggests a mismatch in the economy. Some rebalancing has to be done because government should really not be the prime mover in the economy. Okay? Generally speaking, government bleeds money from the economy rather than contribute to the productive side. Okay? So I think we need, actually I think what we need is some kind of economic task force. Just like how we had a task force concentrating on COVID, we need one for economics to come up with new ways or new ideas on what to do going forward. Because and in the Chamber of Industry and Commerce have been calling for this for some time. The plan for the way forward, and it has not been forthcoming. Okay, so I think that is what we need. Yes, everybody talks about diversification. We have like the offshore industry. We do have some other pillars. We have the offshore educational sector. We have agriculture to some extent. We have manufacturing in St. Kitts. Right? These are other pillars. And it would be nice if these are expanded because they're proven to be more resilient in the crisis. Okay? Maybe we need to fundamentally change our relationship with Taiwan. Taiwan has a big manufacturing sector. Maybe we need to get some entrepreneurs, actively go out and seek some entrepreneurs from there to build up the manufacturing side of things, okay, which will always be needed and which has proven to be, manufacturing always bounces back quickly, regardless of the emergency. If you know, even if it's a hurricane, a natural disaster, okay, it's less susceptible than something like tourism. Yes, all of us hope that tourism would bounce back, but really and truly, it's not up to us. And so we have to actively come up with new plans to do new things, like we did in 2006, okay, to make sure that we keep our leadership in the region. Okay then.
Okay, thank you.
Webbo, I just want to lend some clarity to the discussion and where we're going.
Yeah, before you go, let me take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert. Do we still have this alleged peace program in St. Kitts and Nevis where government is allegedly paying gang members to behave themselves? Does that program still exist?
Yes, I think it still exists.
It still does exist?
Yes, I think.
What I find so unfortunate that the last caller was very detailed in his economic analysis. If the government has identified the let me just get straight to the point, has identified these criminals, my understanding, instead of paying them to behave, some prosecutorial mechanism should be put in place to pull these criminals off the street, rather than making these recurrent expenditures again from reduced recurrent revenues. That is a program that should be abandoned forthwith. I'm not a policeman, never was and never will be, but I believe our police officers here are not as vigilant as they ought to be to surround these so-called criminals whom they've identified and paying. And I also understand we are using 2 senior retired officers as the paymasters here in Nevis. Ladies and gentlemen, I am hoping that our government will wake up and do the bidding of the people. Stop wasting taxpayers' money to pay criminals, and before that money be spent on incarceration, as opposed to, quote, pocket change for these criminals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Look at the
Good
balance.
evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yeah, good evening, Webbo India. Good evening. Now, Webbo, are you listening, right? I want to know if the NRP was in government, or the Labour Party was in government. I believe that is the same thing that maybe the system or the opposition will be the quaking still. So I do not know that government to do on the situation unless they put up a meter. Only meter could bring back in the way right now. So the economy done. I do not know government will suggest this and suggest that and get it done and get that done. When we got to spend so much money in the medical field to control this COVID. You know, for million, you know, the Prime Minister said $1 million to spend again to control this COVID. These people that when they come in, they don't have quarantine. We get in contact every the people that you contact every the people going. So what they want the government to do? Because it's the same thing the opposition and people that switch. So nobody's saying that we have the COVID and we country go back safe and then everything go to the God that this COVID go over. Everybody just negative and political. You understand? It will never work. Because when one politician is when one trying to vote and straight and do what they can do, we don't go up because people can keep things that are already for everybody is suffering because of COVID. No government to do nothing about it. I will stay up here.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hi, Webbo. Good evening. Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
Good evening to your panel.
Good evening.
I'm a step away from the radio. I'm sorry. Webbo, I just wanted to take a moment on this World Teachers Day to just identify some persons that have played a pivotal role, not only in my life, but many lives. Webbo, you and I were classmates, so I know you would know some of them. Certainly, Honorable Joseph Perry and Honorable Vance Amory are 2 people who I was privileged to have had as teachers in my life. Of course, the never forgetful Mrs. Rosalie Andre. And one of the persons, God bless her soul, she's left us, but Alvis Dyer was one of the persons that taught me in girls' school when I was a young girl. And she was a lady that has always been very positive in my life and in my sisters' lives because she taught us through primary school. Back then we called it girls' school. There's so many others that I can think about. One person that has always been very pivotal in my son's life, Vanessa Liebert Williams, She played a huge role in my son's life as he was growing up here and in school. And so I just want to take a moment out tonight to honor the teachers, those who who made us who we are today. Our parents did a good job. Yes, they did. But the teachers, we spent a lot of time with them in our waking hours during every day, and they're the ones, as hard as they were and as difficult as they were the people that made us who we are today. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of them. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Well, the caller who called regarding the stipend that's been in effect to keep the bad boys quiet and on more or less straight and even path, there is a huge dividend. We are no longer hearing about so many deaths occurring.
So you don't agree with him?
No.
Okay, good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, Webbo me again here. Now, a caller earlier said that the government in Nevis is bloated with employees, or what his words. Now, it's better to keep on somebody to cause your system be bloated than to let them go and then the person doesn't have any way of getting any income. If the government shed those who are bloated, they are the first ones who go in and say, well, see, the government victimize people. They could have well keep them on until things get better. But you see, that's politics. And another caller said that a lot of the government blaming this unemployment thing on the COVID. But he forget some years ago I said, why is it the Chinese them do not come and open factories and teach people to make car parts and all kind of parts? And he was the one who said, we don't need them, nobody here to teach, nobody to make no car parts. He was against that. Now he come talking about Taiwan should come and open factories and teach people. I don't know why some people have short memories. They must not forget what I said yesterday. And just before the 2010 election, the government down here, the then government administration, they employ over 3,000 people to work. Webbo, over 3,000 people were doing before they employed them and call the job, they give them the job to PEP. And they go work for 2 hours and a half and they're done. And they're getting 8 hours pay. Well, other people had to go and work 8 and 9 hours to get 8 hours pay. Will he forget all of them kind of thing? What happened? 3,000 one time, so where the 3,000 was?
Okay.
And I don't know Webbo, but here they say Webbo. Webbo, it's better to spend your money to improve things for the better than to keep your money and things get worse. Thank you, Webbo.
Okay, thank you very much. We're just about out of time. This is our last call. You have half a minute.
Yep. If the government did come up with a solution, this thing the government did come up with a solution with the crowd. I believe right now, so, that a next generation will have the incentive needs.
Okay.
Because our young man will have this like, many more than nothing. Many more because this thing has got your hand. And I make you understand that the women just like that. They got to work to get the money.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
I tell you that will be politics. The government has to do because we let India to protect the people.
I gotta go. Okay. That's the last word. This is Thought and Get Results. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock, not at 10 o'clock, but at 1 o'clock, following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought that Get Results. You all have a wonderful evening.
Opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views